Hey guys, Dark Desert Highway here, and today we're going to talk about the Bible. That's what this channel is all about, starting a conversation, because I think about these things daily. They are my meditation. Instead of investing myself in the thoughts of darkness and sin and having fantasies about what the flesh wants, what I try to think about on a daily basis throughout my day is the things of the Lord. You have to remember that the Lord can hear your thoughts. We discussed that in an earlier Bible study about how there are no secrets. The thoughts of our mind are broadcasting, and the Lord can hear them. So we don't want to be meditating on evil things. And we don't want to make our thought life ugly, detestable, and sinful, because that's how it goes. You get these ideas, and then you fantasize about it, and you eventually it manifests in your life that you go and you complete what you've been thinking about. So let's go to James chapter 1, verse 12 through 15. Says, "Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully grown, it gives birth to death." So it starts with our own desires. It starts with our thought life. And after our thought life becomes a physical reality and we act on it, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully grown, it gives birth to death. So let's go up to 13. 12. Let's go up to 12. "Blessed is the one who endures trials." Well, is it really a trial to have a thought? And I would say absolutely. What happened in the Garden of Eden was the exposure to the knowledge of good and evil. So knowledge being the thoughts that we have, right? So when Adam and Eve took part of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they became aware of good and evil. They had the knowledge of good and evil, and they had to bear that knowledge. So think of all of the evil things that you can know about, and that is the knowledge of evil. So the difference, the thing that's difficult is not acting on the knowledge. So we have the capability to know evil now. We know what that is. It's contrast to the good. We know both good and evil, and we must bear the consequence of knowing evil without actually acting on evil. We have to endure the trial of the knowledge of good and evil. Because when he has stood the test, blessed is the one who endures trials. Because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So everything begins with the thought of something, and by meditating on the thought of whatever that thing is, it leads us to action, and action is where we sin. And since sin is alive, a living thing, like an element on the periodical table of elements, it's a thing, and it is what it is, and what it is sinful, and it must fulfill its own created purpose as sin to be sinful. So, and the full maturity of sin is death. Sin, when it is fully mature, gives birth to death, and then we die. So every time we sin, we're actually aging the process of death in our bodies. We're growing up into death by actively participating in our sin. And doesn't some sin immediately lead to death? And other sins over time, it slowly wears you away. So, 12, blessed is the one who endures trials, who endures the knowledge of evil, because when he has stood the test, he will receive a crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. No one undergoing a trial should say, I am being tempted of God, since God is not tempted by evil, and he himself doesn't tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when he is drawn away and enticed by his own evil desire. What's your thought life like? What are we enticed by, and what desires do we have that we meditate on and fantasize about? Fantasies are a normal part of the human condition. We're able to create whole scenarios in our head just by thinking about them. And after the desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully grown, it gives birth to death. Now, look, I'm not saying that all fantasy is bad. Look at the guy who created the skyscraper. He had an imagination that he could build a tall building, or the guy who built the bridge, had an imagination. He imagined it. He drew it up in plans. He got together with other people and talked about it, and it became something that physically is now a part of this world. But we have other thoughts, and it's those thoughts that give life to sin in our lives that we need to be careful about. What is your thought life like? Would you be able, in a room full of people, to talk about the things that you think about? How bad are the things that you think about that you would never tell anyone at all, but silently to yourself, you fantasize about these things? And then eventually the fantasy isn't enough. Eventually it becomes an action. And then that action leads to your sin. And that sin leads to your death. It ages you. Okay, let's go. But each person is tempted when he is drawn away and enticed by his own evil desire. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully grown, it gives birth to death. That was James 1, 12 through 15. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 10:5. We want to have a thought life that we could be proud of, that we wouldn't mind sharing in a room full of people. The healthy thoughts. of it's the evil, sinful thoughts that wear us down, and then we eventually do them, and it destroys our lives. So stop fantasizing about those things. I mean, I've had years of fantasies of my own personal sin. I just love thinking about it. I love thinking about getting what I thought about. And then, sometimes it would work out. And then other times the fantasy wasn't at all in real life what I thought it was going to be like, according to my fantasy. It was horrible and it ruined my life. And it separated me from family members, and it separated me from friends. And people thought, I mean, you know how many good things you could do in your life, and people always remember that one thing that you did that was bad? Like that. Like that, that when you walk into that room, yeah, I did that thing. So, and it all started with our thought life. So 2 Corinthians 10:5. And every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. Okay, check this out. 3. For although we live in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh, since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. We demolish arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ. And we are ready to punish any disobedience once your obedience is complete. So it's really a war. There's this book called Battlefield of the Mind. It's like that. It's a battlefield of the mind. The thing is, is we have knowledge of evil. The thing that we don't want to do is meditate on evil things. Because when we meditate on evil things, eventually we're going to go out and try and do something about it. And the consequence of acting on these evil imaginations, these evil fantasies, and will be sin. And that's where you need to take control of what you think about. It's not a physical war, but there are things that the enemy can do to persuade you through your thought life to act in a way that you would never act without a little push. Whispers of evil things in our ears. Did you know that the enemy whispers into your ear? Thoughts of thievery and murder and rape and molestation and adultery and money and power and death and all the evil things that you can imagine are constantly barraging our minds. And it may not be our mind, but it's in our head. So just because it's in our head, sometimes we think that that's who we are. We think that that's how we think. And we begin to believe that these thoughts belong to us. And we capture these moments of thought. And it's when we engage it. It's when we become engaged in that thought life where we fantasize. We pick it up. It's a thought and it's entered our minds. We believe it's from us because it's our mind, right? But it may not be. But then we pick that thought up and we run with it. And we see how far we can imagine ourselves into that evil desire. It is not a war of the flesh. It is a spiritual war. Since although we live in the flesh, we do not wage war according to the flesh. Since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. Strongholds is what becomes embedded in our mind when we continue to think of things over a long period of time. Like, okay, pornography. Let's look at pornography. We practice it. We look at it. We think about it. We practice it. We imagine ourselves there. We continue from what we've seen into our own fanciful life. And then we physically reward ourselves for the thoughts that we've been having. And that creates a foundation for a stronghold. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it over and over and over, and you practice it. It becomes a daily part of your life. You find yourself separating yourself from people to engage in this activity secretly, and you have to lock your door, and you have to be quiet, or you have to wait for somebody to leave. Because if somebody had known about your activity, you would be exposed, and then you would be confronted with it. So that's one demonstration of how a stronghold can begin in your life. And then you strengthen it through your own fantasy. And then you reward yourself physically by a release of dopamine in the brain when you orgasm, right? Okay, look, man, this is not just some fluffy gospel. It's a war. It is a war for your mind. It is a war that has nothing to do with the flesh, but everything to do with 4. Since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. We demolish arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to obey Christ. So there needs to be a stand. You need to stand against. It's the knowledge of good and evil. We have knowledge of evil. Just because we have knowledge of evil doesn't mean that we need to engage ourselves into evil. And that's the tricky thing about the knowledge of evil, is that it takes up the space of our mind. We know about these things. We see other people engaging in these things. And then sometimes you think, well, I see that it's possible to actually live a life where I do these things. And then, like, check this out. Like, I was seeing something on the internet about this guy named Little Pump or whatever. Anyways, he's some rapper, right? And he's got songs about taking drugs all day and waking up with a bottle of whatever, and taking ecstasy, and he's got girls surrounding him, and he's holding up money, and he's got jewelry on, and it's a war against your mind, and you see other people doing it, and you're like, well, that's the life that I want. But in reality, it destroys you through sinfulness. It's a lure, man. It's a lure because sin will advertise itself. I used to go down the freeway and there was this advertisement for a well, it was a whorehouse, right? It was a strip joint, and the advertisement said one word across it. It said flesh, FELSH, and it had a picture of, you know, some legs, some skinny legs, and a woman's figure, and it was just flesh. And isn't that, what it excites in us? The flesh. Ooh, the sin and the flesh. It's crazy. You go down the street and you see signs for liquor, and advertisements on TV. And TV is not like it used to be. TV is a constant 24-hour advertisement of sin and the flesh. And you can call a number, and you can look at an ad, and there's all these different ways that sin makes itself available to you, because it must be what it is. It is sin. So it must be sinful. And sin uses me to advertise it to someone else, because it must be sinful. But we can take a stand against these things. And that's where we need to stand at the beginning of these things. Look, if you're already invested into a 4-year pornographic lifestyle of cocaine and fast cars and money, you're really going to need to do some work, and take a hold of what God offers through his power in being able to, what is it said? Demolish strongholds. If you're that far into it, then God needs to do a work in your life, because while you're in the darkness, you practice all the things that come along with it. And it takes your time, and that's what you do. When you're smoking some meth, you got your whole routine down. When you're with a woman, you got your whole routine down. When you're looking at trying to get into a married person's bedroom with them, you got your whole routine down. You've probably practiced what you're going to do so that you could be successful at it, right? Because the end goal is to satisfy that sinful urge. So you want to be successful at it. That means you need to practice it. And sometimes that's when God reaches into our lives and pulls us out and stands us up onto our feet. But you were just in the middle of all your darkness. All you know is darkness. All you know is sin. You don't know proper behavioral patterns of the redeemed, right? Because you've never practiced them. They've never been introduced to you. So those of us who are a little further along in our spiritual walk and have knowledge of God's power in breaking down strongholds, right? Since the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but are powerful through God. God has, it's his work, powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. I've had strongholds in my life since I was like 7, I'm uncomfortable with, like, how comfortable would you be walking into a room of strangers and just blurting out all the things that are in your head? You would never do that. Never. But that's what it's like in our relationship with God. You're basically just broadcasting, you're blurting everything out in front of all of the host of heaven, the angels, and the Lord, you are like you're like a radio station. It's a frequency. Your thoughts operate on a frequency, and a radio station is a frequency, right? So you vibrate. I mean, if you really want to get into it, everything is operating on a vibration. So you're broadcasting all of these things out. It's not secret. There's nothing secret. We've had that discussion before. So you want to take a hold of these things. And wouldn't you like to have a thought life that would be pleasing to God all the time? But there are those moments where, look at this, we demolish arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. So what are we combating in this war? Who is our enemy? The arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God. So we have the ability through God to demolish arguments that raise up against the knowledge of God, and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take thought captive to obey Christ. So the ability is there. It's there through the Lord. First, you have to have a relationship with the Lord, and then you experience the power that He has in your relationship. And you see that thing that held you captive, like drugs or pornography or alcohol or women, I mean, you could be captivated by them. And you try to get out and it pulls you back in. You've practiced it so long, you've got like a book of numbers where you can just call, and it's there because you've made interpersonal relationships with people who will enable you to go out and get that thing that you want. So you have to, if you're in a place where you want to stop, you have to, through the power of the Lord, stand against these arguments of the mind, right? Either they're arguments in your mind, or it's an argument that's coming to you from another person. It's an argument. It's an argument. Maybe it's, hey, what if we go do this? Maybe it's presented itself to you in such a way that you can have it immediately. Maybe, man, we demolish arguments and every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to obey Christ. And we are ready to punish any disobedience once your obedience is complete. So what do? Well, I've come to a point where I don't engage in fantasy anymore. I mean, fantasy is cool when you're a construction worker or an engineer or a doctor, but I'm none of those things. I'm a high school dropout, ex-drug addict, alcoholic, a sexual whatever. I'm all those things. And in order for me to continue my day, I have a lot of thoughts that I need to take captive. Basically, I stop them before it gets started. You got to stop it before it gets started. There's the thought. Nope. I just don't do that no more. I don't do it anymore. And so I refuse to entertain it. Now, I'm not sure if it's somebody whispering something to me or just because it's something I've involved myself in the past, but it's there. It is the knowledge of evil. And it's not a part of my thought process anymore to entertain these things in fantasy. And by just stopping it when it started, the first moment I have that thought, and sometimes it's like it's hurtful to have a thought like that. You're like, you know, that sucked, and I don't want to think about that, you know. And sometimes it's something that I really want, because I've wanted these things in the past, and yeah, it gave me pleasure, right? That's what the flesh is about. It's about pleasure and satisfying itself. So of course, my flesh wants to be satisfied in what my flesh wants. The sin that lives in me wants to be sinful. I need to take a stand and be like, we don't play like that anymore. That's just not something we do. And some of it can be entertained by what I involve myself in, like media and TV and music videos and broadcasts and all these things. I can find somebody else who's doing what I want to do, and I could be like, that's it right there, that's what I want. So I can find people who are talking about the things that my flesh wants, but I also need to disassociate myself with that in order to have a healthy thought lifestyle. It's a lifestyle of thinking. And in order for it to be healthy, I need to take captive the thought when it's like, hey, how about some meth? And then, it might even just be somebody comes up to you, right? Devil, the devil, he likes to make the first one's free. First one's free, first one's on me. And I've had people, man, I'm a truck driver. I've had people come up to me, hey, I've had lot lizards come up to me and offer sex. I've had people come up to me and offer me drugs. I go all across the United States. I've seen a lot, and there's a lot of people out there who are, not part of the godly lifestyle that I'm trying to have right now. I'm not trying to be godly. I'm just trying to knock off all the crap, So I cannot entertain you. I cannot entertain you, sir. And I cannot entertain that thought. I need to take a stand against that, against every proud thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. So let's look at Romans 8. Romans 8, 5 through 18. For those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit have their minds set on things of the Spirit. Now, the mindset of the flesh is death, but the mindset of the Spirit is life and peace. The mindset of the flesh is hostile to God because it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it is unable to do so. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God. Yet, however, you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if indeed the Spirit of God lives in you. If anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, he does not belong to him. Now, if Christ is in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit gives life because of righteousness. And if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you, then he who raised Christ from the dead will also bring your mortal bodies to life through his Spirit who lives in you. Okay. So, the flesh. I must not live for the flesh anymore. The things that it wants, the things that it knows about through the knowledge of evil, I cannot give myself permission to even fantasize about these things. It needs to stop where it started, in the mind. In the mind. For those who live according to the flesh, have their minds set on the things of the flesh. But those who live according to the Spirit have their minds set on the things of the Spirit. Now, the mindset of the flesh is death, but the mindset of the Spirit is life and peace. The mindset of the flesh is hostile to God. So if I'm entertaining fleshly things, then I am putting myself in opposition to God, in a hostile position towards the Lord, because he's not like that. He is amazing. He is just and right and true and holy. And I need to conduct myself in a holy manner in order to keep my relationship with him on the up and up, because he knows what I'm thinking. He knew what people were thinking when he was walking around on the earth, and they didn't need to say anything. He knew what they were thinking then. He had that kind of power then. Now, I'm not saying that his power has changed, but he has that power now. Nothing is secret. All things are plain to the Lord, and there is a record that is being kept of everything that we say and do and think. So then, brothers and sisters, we are not obligated to the flesh to live according to the flesh. It is a false idea that I can give myself, that the knowledge of evil means that I must do evil. Okay? Adam and Eve took part of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They went from a place of knowing only good with God to knowing good and evil. And it was in their action of being disobedient towards the Lord that they did their first evil thing and separated themselves from God. Now, ever since then, sin has progressed in mankind in order to be sinful and to advertise itself. So that now, in my time, it's on billboards and in magazines, and it's in pictures that float across flat screen TVs right into my head. They have storybooks and movies and plays and all of these things, and it is an acceptable thing to be sinful. It is an acceptable thing to go out and cheat on your wife or make another woman cheat on her husband. It is an acceptable thing to trade our affections from what it originally was in the beginning with Adam and Eve into whatever it is today. I don't even know what's going on today. Boys are girls and girls are boys, and they're sleeping with each other, and I can't keep track of the name that you want to be identified by or what your pronouns are. I don't get down with any of that. I don't understand that. It's confusion. They are confused. So then, brothers and sisters, we are not obligated to the flesh to live according to the flesh. There is no obligation that just because I know about something, that means I got to go get it. That's a false idea in my head. Now, the idea started in my head. That's where it started. Okay, let's go get this. No, I'm not obligated to do so. Just because the thought is there and the flesh gets a little excited and wants what it wants, I am no longer obligated to the flesh to live according to the flesh. Because if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all those led by God's Spirit are God's sons. For you did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear. Instead, you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies together with our spirit that we are God's children. The Spirit is the key. He is the down payment. He is the deposit of our faith. He is the physical/spiritual marker that you belong to the Lord. If you are baptized in the Spirit, you will know. And if we are children, we are also heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with him, so that we may be glorified with him. And this isn't going to be easy. I'll tell you, when I stopped drinking and looking at porn and smoking weed and dipping tobacco, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was not easy. I went through it. I still want it. I want these things. I just don't get it. I'm not obligated anymore. But yeah, I want it. Every day I want it, but I don't think on those things. I don't give myself the pleasure of entertaining the evil that I used to occupy myself with, because that's no longer who I am. I am, and I will be led by the Spirit. So I am a new creation. I will be led by the Spirit, and it will strengthen my relationship with God. Now, I don't know how long it's going to take for the consequence of my obedience to change into something so that I am a better person than I was, and my relationship with the Lord is, there's got to be something to it. This is where I'm at. There's got to be something to it. The scriptures say that I can do it. Then there's got to be something to it. What is the reward of being obedient? I do not know. I do not know. The promise. All of the promises. But besides the promise, and there's so many, what is in a healthy relationship with the Lord? What wonderful reward is there when I stand my ground? Or will I be met with opposition? Will it just be a constant struggle with the silent self-satisfaction of being right with God? If indeed we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. So there's the promise. The reality is that we're going to have to suffer in saying no to ourselves. But the reward is that we're going to be glorified with him. Let's look at Colossians 3, 1 through 10. Colossians chapter 3, 1 through 10. So if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, and not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. So we're dead now. I'm dead to the flesh. I'm dead to the old men. I'm dead to the darkness that I was pulled from. I'm dead to all of that. And it's a process. Like I said, if all you've known is darkness, then that's all you've known. You must now learn what it is to be in God's light, to have life, and life that's in Christ for you to have today. But in order for you to do that, first you need to know about it. He pulls you out of the darkness. You're introduced to him. He introduces himself to you and gives you his word. You grow up through the word and you say no to the flesh. You die to the flesh. You live in the spirit and you're a bearer of promise. For you died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Therefore, put to death what belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these things, God's wrath is coming upon the disobedient. And you once walked in these things when you were living in them. That's the darkness. But now, put away all of the following: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and filthy language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old self with its practices and have put on the new self. You are being renewed in the knowledge according to the image of your Creator. So that's a lot of things. We must put to death what belongs to your earthly nature. Put away and put on the new self. You are being renewed in the knowledge according to the image of your Creator. So we are in the process of being renewed. Don't get discouraged if you can't knock it all out at one time. But take steps. Take a stand against something. And the flesh will probably be angry with you. Like, hey, hold on, wait a minute. What's all this? We're not getting this thing anymore. I get whatever I want when I think it. Don't tell me I don't get what I want anymore and there's a fight with the flesh. You know? Like when have we ever stopped ourselves from getting what we want? I'll tell you, the first moment of the thought of alcohol or drugs or women, I'd go get it. So what is this? We're putting a stop to something here, and you're going to start that battle, that suffering, that war that you're supposed to be involved in. Romans 12, 1 through 3. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in the view of the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. So, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is a process. You start like a child, learning very basic things. But eventually, you're going to come to an age where it's now expected of you because you have matured. And if you're not standing up on your own by now, maybe the Father is going to have to intervene. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a negative intervention, but there will be a strong motivated push, right? There's going to be a strong push towards maturity at some point, because he's not going to allow you to sit there in an infantile stage of your Christian life. He is going to grow you up in understanding, in the knowledge of the Lord your God, and you're going to become responsible for it. Last one, Matthew 12:33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good things when you are evil? For the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. A good person produces good things from his storeroom of good, and an evil person produces evil things from his storeroom of evil. So it's the time. Either make the tree good and its fruit will be good, or make the tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. It is time to separate yourself from that half and half lifestyle of not being sure which way you're going to be led by today. Either commit not either commit, commit. Commit, man. It's time for commitment. It's time for some real effort to be exercised in our thought life. So, stop entertaining and fantasizing about evil things. Your behavior will change because of it. And you might be a little bit more sociable, because instead of secretly mulling over, how can I get this? And planning and strategizing against the Lord in order to satisfy yourself. Commit to a healthy lifestyle of breaking off the thought, whatever it is, of evil. It's the knowledge of good and evil. That's what we carry around with us. That is the burden of the mind, is that we know evil. And that's what I got for today. All right. I hope you guys got something from this. I'll see you next time.